North America's most important trade corridor, is suddenly losing traffic. Canada is rapidly strengthening ties with Europe, and a massive Supreme Court ruling could now force the US government into a staggering $166 billion tariff refund crisis. But this story goes far beyond politics. Global automakers, supply chains, and critical EV battery networks are already adapting to a world where America's closest allies are beginning to rethink decades of economic dependence on Washington. And once trade routes, manufacturing investments, and strategic partnerships begin shifting, reversing that momentum becomes incredibly difficult. Your roadmap to the latest in auto? Welcome to Highway Herald. And here are the developments quietly reshaping the global economy. Bridge trade war. Truckers abandon key U.S. crossing. For decades, the Ambassador Bridge served as one of North America's most important trade corridors, linking Windsor and Detroit while moving massive volumes of automotive parts and commercial freight between Canada and the United States. Controlled by the Maroon family since 1979, the bridge became a toll powerhouse built on deep, cross-border economic integration. But that dominance is now rapidly fading. In 2025, the Blue Water Bridge in Sarnia officially surpassed the Ambassador Bridge in commercial truck traffic as trucking companies increasingly chose lower-cost routes. With rising fuel prices, inflation, and slowing freight demand, toll costs suddenly became critical. Controversy intensified after reports connected Trump allies to efforts protecting Ambassador Bridge interests before the Gordie Howe International Bridge opens. Ironically, those efforts may have accelerated competition instead, forcing the Ambassador Bridge to slash toll prices while truckers and businesses continue shifting elsewhere. But the bridge battle may only be the beginning, because Canada itself is now rethinking how dependent it should remain on the United States economically and strategically. Canada's global pivot. Europe becomes strategic trade partner. For decades, Canada built its economy around deep integration with the United States, especially in automotive manufacturing, energy, agriculture, and supply chains. But growing tariff threats and unpredictable trade policies are now pushing Ottawa toward diversification instead of over-reliance on Washington. Under Prime Minister Mark Carney, Canada appears increasingly focused on long-term economic resilience and new strategic partnerships. That is why comments from Finnish President Alexander Stubb gained global attention after he suggested Canada's political values and strategic interests closely align with Europe. The symbolism was enormous. Canada and Europe are already expanding cooperation in defense, energy, battery production, critical minerals, and automotive supply chains. This matters greatly for the EV industry because Canada holds major reserves of lithium, nickel, cobalt, and graphite. As European automakers seek stable partners outside China and volatile American trade environments, Canada is rapidly becoming a far more valuable long-term strategic ally. And while allies abroad are restructuring trade relationships, Washington is now facing a growing crisis at home that could dramatically shake confidence in future American trade policy. Tariff chaos erupts. $166 billion refund crisis begins. The Trump administration is facing a massive trade policy crisis after the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act did not authorize the broad tariffs imposed on countries including Canada, Mexico, and China. That decision effectively invalidated large portions of tariffs collected since 2025, potentially triggering around $166 billion in refunds owed to businesses and importers. U.S. customs systems were never designed for refunds on this scale, forcing officials to rush development of a new processing system, while many companies remain uncertain about when they will recover their money. For importers already struggling with inflation, higher borrowing costs, and slowing demand, the delays are creating severe financial pressure. The automotive industry is especially vulnerable because modern vehicle manufacturing depends on complex global supply chains involving batteries, semiconductors, aluminum, steel, and electronics, where sudden tariff changes can dramatically increase production costs overnight. And what makes this even more significant is that automakers, investors, and governments are already preparing for a future built around entirely different trade alliances and supply chain strategies. If you're enjoying this deep dive, subscribe to Highway Herald for more automotive updates, geopolitical developments, and industry transformations shaping the future of driving worldwide. Global power shift. Supply chains break old alliances. What connects these developments is something far bigger than tariffs, bridges, or politics. The global economic system appears to be entering a new era of strategic realignment. For decades, the United States dominated trade influence among Western allies, but many countries are now reassessing how dependent they should remain on any single economic partner. Canada strengthening ties with Europe, truckers abandoning expensive trade routes, and governments pursuing alternative partnerships are no longer isolated events. Automakers are also adapting by regionalizing production, securing local battery supply chains, and reshoring manufacturing to improve geopolitical resilience instead of chasing maximum globalization efficiency. Ironically, aggressive pressure tactics may be accelerating diversification rather than strengthening leverage. America remains one of the world's largest economies and innovation leaders, but trust and predictability now matter more than ever. And once countries and manufacturers begin building alternative systems, reversing that momentum becomes extremely difficult. And once countries, manufacturers, and investors begin building alternative systems, reversing that momentum becomes far more difficult than many leaders expect. Final verdict: America's trade influence faces major challenge. What makes this entire story fascinating is how everything now connects together. A trade bridge losing dominance, allies quietly building alternative partnerships, and a massive tariff refund crisis all reveal deeper concerns about stability inside the global economic system. The real issue may no longer be tariffs alone, but whether governments, automakers, investors, and trading partners still view long-term economic relationships as predictable enough to trust. Once countries begin diversifying supply chains and strategic partnerships, reversing that momentum becomes incredibly difficult. And the automotive world has shown countless times how quickly dominant players can lose ground when rivals adapt faster to changing realities. Do you think Canada and Europe will continue moving further away from Washington? Could tariff instability permanently reshape global automotive manufacturing, and will supply chain diversification ultimately help or hurt consumers in the long run? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to Highway Herald for more vehicle updates and global automotive developments, and share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Thanks for watching. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's more exciting and informative content waiting for you.